So you load up the AK and you check to see if the round is actually seated. The bolt locks up to seat the bullet in the chamber, and that takes way more stress than most people realize. So the bolt has to hold the whole explosion in place for a split second before it ejects. The AK does that with just 2 big shoulders. An AR does the same job like a bottle cap, but with a whole ring of little teeth to spread the stress. But the AK funnels that same force into just 2 spots. And those 2 spots eat all the stress over and over until they wear out over time. So over thousands of rounds, the lugs and the chamber wear out. Then the trunnion that holds the barrel starts to give up. You almost never see an AR chew itself up like that. The AK does it far more often. The AK's indestructible reputation is mostly true, but it doesn't mean it's flawless in every situation. The next flaw makes an AK because it keeps everything loose. It's exactly why it eats dirt and keeps running. Nothing is wound up too tight, so there's nowhere for grime to jam things up. It's far more forgiving than a precision-machined guns in the West. Yes, there are stamped versus milled AK receivers, but Kalashnikov made a choice to trade long-term toughness for short-term survival. And that's the seed of almost every other nitpicky flaw on this list. Because keeping it loose has a second cost, which is accuracy when you try to hit something further away. So, to keep it simple, it's normal to see these things wiggle and move a little. And here is what AR-15 users think the AK should be, like having every part clamped, nothing moving, and leave the barrel left alone to do its thing. But the AK is just the opposite. Mounting optics on the dust cover is probably the worst flaws the AK encounters when people tried to AR it. The dust cover has a weak hinge holding it on, and it's very fragile if you drop it or bend it. Now suddenly your zero is gone, even if the optic itself held zero just fine. Some people will say they hold zero, and they are totally wrong. A stamped piece of metal that sits loose will never hold zero, even if the optic and the mount are the best money can buy. I guess it's the biggest flaw when people try to AR it like it's an M16, and the side rail does a heck of a lot better than any dust cover mod out there. The AK-12 is a clear example of that. AK is front heavy, and while we're on the things you feel in your hands, the AK is usually nose heavy. There's nothing functional inside the stock, and most of the weight comes from the piston that stretches all the way out front. That's why it's called the long stroke piston. It's not exactly a flaw if the gun keeps running. A design flaw is an inherent defect in the blueprint, something that makes a product unsafe or ineffective. But look at the AK's downsides here. There is a big gap when the safety is off, and that gap lets debris right in. So the controls sit on the awkward right side, and that big stiff paddle kind of fights you a little every time. But here's the flip side. That same big paddle is easy to work under stress. A tiny switch is the thing your fingers fumble with when your motor skills go to mush. Now we get to the flaw that actually stops AKs in the real world, which has everything to do with the magazine first. So when an AK chokes, there are 2 ways it fails. 1. The spring inside goes weak, usually on old surplus mags, and the follower stops pushing rounds up to where the bolt can grab them. 2. The mag takes a dent, or the side gets crushed. And when that spine splits, the whole mag spreads open. The lips that hold your rounds in line suddenly let go, so then the feeding stops. This kind of thing happens in other firearms too, if the mag isn't doing its job. So don't take it literally that the AK is 1000% indestructible. It's a reputation, not a fact for every situation. Even the safest plane can't beat physics if the engines completely die. But let's just say your mag is perfect, alright? The gun can still fail to hold it all together, depending on which AK is using which mag, because they are not all standardized like your AR-15 mags. An AK mag has to hook onto a little metal lip up front, then lock to a tab at the back. And that tab has to be cut to exactly the right size. Some engineers cut that tab by fitting it against a reference mag, right there on the line. except some sloppy shops crank out so many guns that the reference mags get beaten to death, and the quality drifts. So if the tab comes out wrong, then the mag will wobble. If it wobbles, it tilts the rounds, so the bolt skims right over them instead of scooping them up. So if they cut too little off, then the mag won't lock in at all. The AK is inherently a gun with messy specs. American-made AKs have common mag fit issues. Nothing is built to one tight universal spec. But it's still such a brilliant design, it can be built horribly wrong and still work. A flaw doesn't have to make something fail in the case of the AK. From a manufacturing and compatibility standpoint, it's a headache since dozens of countries over decades like the Soviet, Chinese, Bulgarian, and all these countries showing here all made small dimensional changes. But regardless, the rifle still runs. It does, right up until one tiny hole clogs. The AK runs on gas, just like an AR-15, through a small gas port, and that jet of gas is what slams the action back to load the next round. This part of the rifle is a magnet for junk. Carbon builds up, and it can eventually choke the whole thing and stop it from cycling. Now, the AK's saving grace is that it's the easiest gun in the world to clean out. Pop the cover, dust it off, done. But there's a catch that trips people up. People should never oil the gas system because oil plus carbon turns to paste, and paste is what kills it. The AK doesn't ask for much, but neglect it forever was always a myth, with a limit. Flaw number 5, light primer strike. The firing pin is a tiny rod that floats inside the bolt and punches the primer to fire the round. It's supposed to slide free in there. That smallest part suddenly becomes the biggest problem if it doesn't make a round go bang. If you pack that channel with enough carbon and the pin stops hitting the primer, and it gets worse when the factory drills that channel the wrong size, because now even more gunk packs in around it. Put the bolt back together wrong, and the pin jams the whole action. And there's been a quiet rash of firing pins simply breaking, cracking, bending, on guns where they never used to. Even the spring-loaded ones wear out. The hardcore AK guys, the ones who defend this rifle to the grave, will tell you to watch your firing pin. Which brings us to the real flaw, underneath half this list. The AK didn't get worse, the factories did. There are a bunch of poorly made ones circulating now, mixed in with all the good guns out there. The original AKs were built by state arsenals. Government factories didn't have to turn a profit. They could pick good steel, heat treat it right, hand fit the parts, and take their time. Well, that world is gone. The surplus guns get rushed out of European plants as fast as they can stamp them. They finally got a taste of capitalism, and now they're chasing the order book. And the steel quality, naturally, slips. Then, the American makers are stuck too, because they're building to a price you'll actually pay, and that caps how good the gun can be. The soldier-proof Kalashnikov wasn't really about the design, it was about a system that built it without ever looking at a spreadsheet. And that system doesn't exist anymore. And if you think that's just American factories cutting corners, then let's look at Russia's newest AK-12 in the Ratnik modernization program. This one was supposed to carry the legend forward. It had some issues reported in Ukraine, and politics aside, the gun itself was just trying to do too much. They tried to westernize it, reinventing the wheel, moving away from what makes the AK an AK. So, for example, the railed dust cover does a horrible job holding zero, which we have already covered earlier. The fire selector switch is notoriously crowded, and it's prone to over-travel. That just means the operator might click it past the intended stop. So the rifle's design was forced to go back to its root features from older variants. The 2-round burst mode got discarded as useless in practice, just like what the M16A2 did with its 3-round burst limiter. The American military didn't like it, and the AK tried it too and also didn't like it. And the reason is the exact same reason. It was the first AK to come out of a Russian arsenal that wasn't purely state-sponsored. The moment even Russia had to think about profit, their own rifle got worse. And so far, they've already made a bunch of changes. You can tell by the stocks. The biggest irony of the AK isn't on the rifle at all. It's actually the price tag, because it was once the cheapest rifle you could buy in America. Surplus imports flooded the market, while AR-15s were expensive. In countries where guns are illegal, none of this actually matters. In the United States, though, if you want a real, true spec AK, you're hunting down original parts and paying boutique money to have someone assemble them right. The rifle that was designed to arm a peasant army by the millions has quietly become a connoisseur's purchase. Look, the AK isn't a bad rifle. Every flaw on this list is just the modern world walking up and asking it a question it was never built to answer. Some things worked, and some just didn't work out. And you can watch this video to see what the AK has copied from the AR-15 that were actually worth doing.